The day my husband's first love became a widow was the day he asked me for a divorce. With our daughter's unwavering support, this silver-haired man, once my entire world, turned away from me without a shred of hesitation. He held her hand, firm and proud, and married his first love. Their wedding photos, glowing with laughter and joy, spread like wildfire online, captivating the hearts of strangers who didn't know the wreckage left behind. I walked into their wedding banquet that day, head held high. Gregory staggered when he saw me, his steps unsteady, but he never let go of Margaret's hand. His voice trembled, but his words were cruelly steady. "Eleanor, please, don't ruin my wedding. Let's part on good terms." I smiled, cool and measured. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not here to cause trouble," I said softly. "I'm only here to give you both a very special gift." Not long ago, Gregory had come to me, demanding a divorce. I was stunned. He was 70 years old. What on earth could possibly drive him to such a decision at this stage in life? He didn't bother sugarcoating it. "Margaret's husband passed away," he said, his tone gentle, but the words sharp as knives. "She needs me now. I want to spend the rest of my life with her." At first, I was numb, stunned beyond words. Then, as if some switch had flipped, my mind spun with questions. Had I done something wrong? Was this one of his old man tantrums? Surely this was just another fit he'd get over, wasn't it? But no. No matter what I said, whether I reasoned, pleaded, or even tried to joke it away, his decision never wavered. His mind was made up. He was leaving me. After 50 years of marriage, he was done. It happened so fast, like a sudden gust ripping through a fragile window. Just 2 weeks ago, he was still sitting in our living room, glasses perched on his nose, reading the newspaper as I brought him tea. And now he was someone else's husband. I swept my gaze across the banquet hall, calm on the surface but crumbling inside. The venue was filled to bursting. Gregory's former students, old friends, respected colleagues, and Margaret's devoted readers, admirers who praised her as a literary icon. Amidst the crowd stood someone holding a bouquet of fresh white lilies. I recognized her immediately, our daughter, Sophia. The moment she saw me, her face shifted. She hurriedly shoved the bouquet into the arms of someone beside her and pushed her way through the throng toward me. Her voice was tight, barely masking her annoyance. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she snapped. "Today is Dad's big day. Don't make a scene. Don't embarrass yourself." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. "Sophia, do you really think I came here to ruin anything?" She crossed her arms, her expression cool, almost icy. "Dad and Aunt Margaret were forced apart for nearly 40 years because of you. Haven't you had him long enough?" "Because of me?" My voice trembled, not from anger, but disbelief. Sophia's eyes didn't waver. Her tone was as sharp as a blade. "Dad is a scholar, a respected expert. His students are all over the country. And you're just an uneducated housewife. You've never been his equal." A gentle hand reached out to tug Sophia's arm. Margaret's soft voice followed. "Sophia, you shouldn't speak to your mother that way," she said, with practiced sweetness. "A housewife who raised you, supported your father all these years, she's had a hard life too." For a brief moment, Sophia's face softened, her brows furrowing. But then, with a resigned sigh, she said, "Fine, if you say so, Aunt Margaret." Then she turned back to me, voice impatient again, but slightly less harsh. "Mom, you don't belong here. This is Dad's wedding. If you're here to make trouble, please don't. You'll only embarrass yourself." Before I could respond, a hotel attendant appeared, as if summoned by her words. I was being ushered toward the entrance, my own daughter walking behind me to make sure I left.
"Oh," Sophia added, almost as an afterthought, "Ethan's getting out of school soon. No one's home. Why don't you go pick him up? Maybe take him to the playground." Her mention of Ethan, my sweet grandson, stung even more than her cold dismissal. My lips parted, but the lump in my throat made it impossible to form words. I swallowed down the rising burn of humiliation, took a deep breath, and nodded. Fine. I'd let it go, for now. I turned, heading toward the hotel's grand entrance. Just then, a group of young people came rushing in, laughter bubbling as they sprinted past. One of them accidentally bumped into me, sending me stumbling back a step. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, ma'am," the young man said breathlessly, steadying me. "We're in a hurry. The wedding's already started." A voice from further inside shouted back at him, waving excitedly. "Hurry up! Professor Gregory and Miss Margaret are about to give their vows. Don't waste time." I watched them disappear into the glowing hall, their excitement palpable, their voices buzzing with admiration. The dazzling light from the crystal chandeliers glared through the doors, almost mocking. On a massive screen above the main stage, their wedding photo glowed, Gregory and Margaret smiling like star-crossed lovers reunited after decades. Below it, the caption read, "Love knows no fear." It felt like someone slapped me. A bitter chuckle slipped from my lips. In everyone's eyes, I was never a match for him, was I? I was never good enough. But once, just once, I was supposed to have my own chance. Once upon a time, it was me who should have gone to school. But my father had emptied every last penny to pay for someone else's tuition, Gregory's, the orphaned son of his best friend. And to do that, I was forced to drop out of school. I could still hear my mother's muffled sobs that night as she argued with my father. "You should have let Eleanor go to college. If you don't, she'll end up just like me." But my father never responded. He just sat there, silently puffing on his cigarette, eyes clouded with something that wasn't guilt, but duty. And yet, I wasn't angry back then, not even a little. I'd run to Gregory, breathless with excitement, and told him, "You can go to school now, and when you come home, you can teach me everything you learn, okay?" The day Gregory left for university, he kept glancing back. Every few steps weighed with guilt. But I had only waved him forward, more annoyed by his hesitation than anything else. Back in Willow Creek, I worked harder than anyone, hauling, harvesting, helping my parents from dawn until dusk. I dreamed of the day autumn would come, and I'd have saved enough to buy him something, a warm coat, maybe, or a leather-bound notebook. That winter, Gregory had once held my hand and whispered, "Eleanor, don't worry. Once I graduate, I'll get a good job. I'll bring you with me. We'll have a good life together." How naive I'd been. But now, decades later, that same man who once swore to build a future with me stood there, proud, polished, and indifferent, claiming that we had nothing in common. More than once in recent years, Gregory had sighed in frustration, newspaper flung aside, and muttered, "Eleanor, why don't you try writing a book? Learn something, anything. Otherwise, I'm embarrassed to even tell my students that my wife doesn't even have a basic education." Each time, those words pierced deeper than he probably realized. At my age, with a house to run, meals to cook, laundry to fold, a family to hold together, where exactly was I supposed to find the time to sit down and study? And when I refused, because how could I not, he would rise from his chair, irritation etched into every line of his aging face. "I'm heading to Margaret's. Maybe I'll play a game of chess with Henry while I'm there." For years, I believed those chess games were real. Silly me. Turns out, Henry, Margaret's late husband, was nothing more than a shadow, an accidental obstacle between Gregory and the woman he'd truly wanted all along. I hadn't realized then, but it had never been about chess. It was always about her. I sighed as the past tangled itself with the present in my mind. Before I even noticed, my feet had carried me all the way to Ethan's kindergarten. The playground was quiet now. All the other children had already been picked up. Through the window, I spotted him. Ethan sat at a tiny desk, swinging his legs, drawing aimless circles on a piece of paper. The teacher's face broke into relief the moment she noticed me. "Oh, thank goodness, I couldn't get in touch with his mother. I'm glad you came, ma'am. Ethan, your grandma's here." I forced a smile, squeezing past the knot in my throat. "Thank you," I murmured, reaching for Ethan's tiny hand. "Let's go, sweetheart." As we stepped outside toward the bus stop, Ethan tilted his head up, his dark eyes wide with curiosity. "Grandma, where are we going?" I glanced down at him, struggling to rearrange my expression into something that wasn't bitter. "How about the playground?" I offered, masking the tremor in my voice with a smile. His lips puckered into an immediate pout. "I don't want to go to the playground," he whined, tugging at my hand. "I want to go to Grandpa's wedding." My steps faltered. Even Ethan knows. I stared at him, stunned. What on earth did they tell this child? That his 70-year-old grandfather still believed in chasing after his first love? That discarding his wife of half a century was something noble and romantic? Ethan tugged again, swinging our clasped hands back and forth. "Please, Grandma, pretty please. I want to go. My new grandma is Aunt Margaret. All my classmates know. And she's a famous writer. If I tell everyone that my grandma's Margaret, they won't make fun of me anymore." For a moment, I could only stare at him, my sweet, earnest grandson, his little face filled with the innocent kind of hope that only children could muster. I crouched down, gently taking his backpack off his shoulders. With a deep breath, I mustered a smile. "All right," I said softly. "Let's go to your grandpa's wedding." Ethan lit up instantly, bouncing in place. "Yay!" As we rode the bus back toward the hotel, his chatter never stopped. "Grandma, if you're not going to live with us anymore, where will you go? Will you go back to Willow Creek?" His voice faltered a little. A sharp ache pricked at my chest. I tried to steady my cone. Would you want Grandma to go back there?" His little nose wrinkled as he thought about it, kicking his feet back and forth against the seat. "Well, if you leave, I won't get to eat your chocolate cake anymore." He puffed out his cheeks, then added thoughtfully, But, if people know my new grandma is Margaret, they'll be so jealous. She's on TV. She has books with her name on them." He muttered to himself for a moment, weighing the pros and cons in his tiny mind, completely oblivious to how his words twisted like a knife inside me. Despite myself, a dry chuckle escaped my lips. At least the child is honest about what he wants, I thought bitterly. More honest than his mother. More honest than his grandfather. Gregory chased after the illusion of true love, desperate to rewrite history in his twilight years. And Sophia, my own daughter, she wasn't chasing love. No, she was chasing influence, prestige, a stepmother who could give her the social status she believed I'd never been able to provide. And yet, somehow, they both agreed that the root of all their disappointments was me. "It's your fault. If you had just educated yourself, we wouldn't be here." Gregory's words on the day he walked out still echoed in my ears. And Sophia, she hadn't hesitated to parrot them. "Mom, stop being stubborn. Dad and Aunt Margaret are a perfect match. You're just a housewife. You've had so many good years with Dad."
"Shouldn't you be grateful? Just let him go now." I squeezed Ethan's hand a little tighter, blinking back the sting behind my eyes. Suddenly, an image from my past flashed vividly in my mind. My father, strong, broad-shouldered, pacing the dirt yard, fists clenched, voice hoarse with fury. If I had known the boy I sacrificed so much for would grow into an ungrateful man like this, would I have done it? That question burned through me now, louder than it had ever been. I remembered the day Gregory proposed to me. He had just graduated, diploma still fresh in his hands. I'd been hesitant, terrified even. "You're brilliant," I told him back then. "You have a future ahead of you, a bright one. How could I ever be enough for you? Don't marry me just because you feel like you owe my father. Neither he nor I would want that." But Gregory had held my hands tightly in his, looking me square in the eyes.
"This isn't about owing anyone," he said, his voice firm, filled with certainty. I just, I just feel like we're a perfect fit. We'll be happy together." Simple, earnest, honest, and I, foolishly, believed every word. Back then, I thought love meant companionship, building a home, weathering storms together. I never imagined that one day, decades later, that same man would discard me like an old, outdated book, one whose cover embarrassed him to even glance at. Now, here he stood, hand in hand with Margaret, his face radiant under the crystal lights, surrounded by guests offering blessings, admiration, and praise. The same man who once swore to cherish me until the end was now basking in applause for marrying someone else while pretending I had never existed. And as if fate couldn't mock me enough, the first person to rush toward him wasn't just anyone, it was Ethan. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" Ethan's sweet, high-pitched voice rang out like a bell in the crowded hall. "You look so handsome today." The crowd laughed in delight. Some cooed at how adorable he was. Others exchanged knowing smiles, as if this little boy perfectly embodied the joy of the occasion. None of them knew, none of them cared, that the suit Gregory was wearing, the very one making him look so dignified and polished, was stitched by my own hands. Years ago, I had sewn that suit for him, every thread infused with my care. And on the inside cuff, a tiny loop of blue thread, his so-called lucky charm, a detail only he and I knew about. How poetic. He had pulled that suit from the back of his closet, a relic of our life together, ironed it, buttoned it up, and worn it to marry someone else. Margaret spotted me from across the room. Her smile was gentle, crafted, the kind you'd wear when pretending to be magnanimous. "Eleanor," she called, her tone as light as porcelain, "come have a seat. Gregory mentioned you'd be moving back to Willow Creek. What are your plans after that?" Before I could even form a response, whispers began swirling like a growing storm through the crowd. Why is she here? That woman, how did someone like her even marry Professor Gregory? Right? No talent, no accomplishments, just some countryside housewife. Must have been luck or pity. Exactly. And now that he's finally moving on, she's still clinging? Pathetic. Their words sliced through me, razor sharp, but I stood tall. I'd been cut before, deeper than this. I'd learned how to bleed without showing it. Memories surged forward, unbidden, years of being hidden, ignored. Gregory had never once allowed me to visit his workplace, not even to drop off his lunch or important documents. Every time I showed up, he ordered me to leave it at the security gate. "If anyone asks, just say you're the housekeeper," he'd mutter, brushing past me as though I were invisible. Even the time I had nervously approached him, asking if he could recommend some books so I could start learning, his response was icy. "You read? Stop wasting time. Go cook. We're hungry." It was never about protecting my time. It was about keeping me ignorant, small. Because the day I learned to stand on equal footing would be the day he lost the excuse to belittle me, the day he'd have to confront the truth about himself. "Mom," Sophia's voice snapped me back, sharp with irritation. "What are you doing? Stop zoning out. Everyone's looking. Just leave." She shoved a wad of cash toward me. "Here, take this. Get a cab, go home. Don't make a scene." I stared at the bills in her hand, crisp, folded neatly. I hadn't had control over my own money in decades. Every allowance was scrutinized. Even when I got sick, I had to ask Gregory for money to see a doctor. The humiliation, the dependence, it had become routine. And now, here stood my own daughter, dangling money in front of me like I was some nuisance to be paid off. I didn't reach for it. Sophia frowned, impatient. "What? Is it not enough?" She rifled through her purse, adding more bills. "Fine, 200, 3, 500, will that do?" Before her fingers could brush against mine again, my hand shot out, not to grab the money, but to slap her squarely across the face. The sharp sound cracked through the hall like thunder. Time froze. The crowd gasped. Heads turned. Utter silence swallowed the room. Sophia stood there stunned, one hand pressed to her cheek, her eyes wide, mouth trembling open, but no sound coming out. I looked her straight in the eye, voice cold, steady, and unforgiving. "Who do you think you're talking to? You're bribing your own mother to leave just so your father can parade around with his mistress in peace?" "You," Sophia stammered, how could you?" But I cut her off, my words slicing through hers. "You're just as ungrateful as he is." Gregory stormed forward then, face red with fury, dragging Margaret behind him. His voice shook, whether from anger or embarrassment, I wasn't sure. "Eleanor, calm down. This is my wedding. I won't let you ruin it." He exhaled heavily, rubbing his temple like I was the unreasonable one. Fine, I admit it. Your father helped me. Without him, I wouldn't have gone to college. Maybe I wouldn't have survived at all." His shoulders squared slightly as he continued, trying to regain control. "But I've paid that debt. I've repaid it tenfold over the years. I've never mistreated you." Margaret chimed in, all sweet sympathy, her tone dipped in condescension. "Eleanor, I know this is difficult. I'm not trying to erase the past. Truly, I'm not. You and Gregory shared a life, but we belong together now." Gregory's gaze hardened. "Why can't you just let it go? Let the past stay in the past." I let out a dry, brittle laugh. "Half of what you said is true." My eyes narrowed. "You didn't mistreat me, in the sense that I didn't starve to death under your roof." The crowd stiffened, shifting uncomfortably. "But where were you," I continued, "when I was raising Sophia alone while you buried yourself in research?" Murmurs spread. "And after I gave birth to her, you stopped sharing a bed with me. No, not just the bed. You moved into a separate room. You told me it was because you needed quiet to focus, because you didn't want to disturb me and the baby." My voice dropped lower, sharper. "Even when the baby was grown and the house was silent, you still never came back." I tilted my head. "I finally understand why." A wave of gasps washed through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another hissed, "She's serious? All these years?" Gregory's face darkened to the color of wine, his hands curling into fists. "This is humiliating," he spat. "How could you say such things in front of everyone?" I raised a brow. "Oh, now you care about your dignity?" I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the tense air like glass. "You've had decades of dignity, Gregory."
Where was that dignity when you were sneaking behind Henry's back? When you and Margaret were meeting in secret, running your little affair while pretending to be virtuous? The banquet hall exploded. Gasps, shouts, a few even dropped their drinks. Gregory's entire body shook. His finger jabbed toward me, trembling with rage. You foolish woman! Do you have no shame? Saying something like this in public?" I laughed, calm, controlled, cruel. "Yes, I am foolish, but at least I know the difference between right and wrong." My eyes swept from him to Margaret, her face pale now, her carefully constructed mask cracking. "Unlike the two of you." Gregory's face twisted into something ugly, a strange cocktail of fury and humiliation. His hands trembled at his sides, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't quite summon the words fast enough. For the first time in years, I felt light, strangely free. The whispers around us grew louder, turning into an ocean of murmurs and scandalized gasps. I barely noticed. My mind was miles away, tracing back to where it all began. Decades ago, on a quiet summer evening, my father brought home a boy, thin, serious, polite. "This is Gregory," he'd said, voice heavy with meaning, "the son of a friend who once saved my life." He looked fragile back then, lost but determined. From that day forward, he lived under our roof. Of course, small towns are breeding grounds for gossip. The whispers came fast. "Are you sure that boy isn't your husband's illegitimate child? Raising someone else's child? Does she even know what she's doing?" Every time my mother caught wind of it, she stormed out the door, hands on her hips, ready to fight anyone with a tongue loose enough to spread poison. "Which one of you cowards is running your mouth?" she'd bark. "My man isn't like that. Mind your own homes before your husbands start wandering." And yet, every time she turned back toward Gregory, her face softened. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she'd whisper to him, brushing his hair back. "As long as I'm here, no one will ever bully you." I was the same, just like her. If anyone so much as breathed a cruel word about Gregory, they had me to answer to. I fought tooth and nail for him. I was small, but my fists were not. Even the rowdy boys in town knew better than to insult Gregory within earshot of me. Say one more thing about him, and I'll break your nose with a rock. I meant every word. If someone had told that wild, fiercely protective girl that one day she'd be standing here, discarded, humiliated, treated like a stranger at her own husband's wedding, she wouldn't have believed it, not in a million years. Gregory's voice yanked me back to the present, low and cold. "I've told you, I'm spending the rest of my life with Margaret. No matter how much you cry or scream, it won't change anything." He glared. "Instead of embarrassing yourself, why don't you hold on to what little dignity you have left?" My hands balled into fists at my sides, but I didn't tremble. Not anymore. I took one slow step forward, stared him straight in the eyes, and then, without thinking, I spat at his feet. The entire hall gasped. "I don't care who you spend your life with," I said, voice razor sharp. "I never said you couldn't move on. But let's be clear, our divorce isn't finalized yet." My smile stretched, sharp and cruel. "And yet, here you are, throwing yourself a wedding before the ink is even dry. Tell me, Gregory, who exactly in this room is the one with no dignity?" He stiffened. Margaret's face twisted into something barely recognizable. Her lips curled in distaste, her hands clenched around her clutch like she wanted to smash it over my head. "You want a divorce?" I continued, not giving either of them a moment to speak. "Fine, but I'm not accepting your terms. Not now, not ever." The air thinned, crackling with tension. I gave everything. My voice shook, not from weakness, but from the weight of truth. "I gave up my education, my youth, my health, my family's sacrifices, and now? You think you can toss me aside with nothing? You think I'm too stupid, too uneducated to know how unfair that is?" Margaret let out a laugh, short, bitter, dripping with mockery. "Oh, please, Eleanor," she sneered. "We're not asking you to leave with nothing. It's just that, well, maintaining a household all these years has been expensive. Gregory's done his best, but there isn't much left." She flipped her hair over her shoulder, her voice sliding into something syrupy sweet. "Don't worry, though. When you move back to Willow Creek, we'll send you a monthly allowance. And if the old house is in bad shape, I'll even cover the cost to renovate it for you." A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd, a few gasps, a few people turned away, uncomfortable. "Oh," someone whispered, "so that's what this is really about. Money." "Figures," another muttered. "She just doesn't want to let go." Clingy, shameless, disgraceful. The labels came fast and furious, whispered behind hands, couched in judgment dressed as civility. I let out a cold laugh, sharp as breaking glass. I truly thought I was standing in a room full of intellectuals," I said, letting my gaze sweep across the banquet hall. "But it turns out you're all just as ignorant as they are." I took a deep breath, steadying my voice until it dropped into something calm, deadly. "You're no different from these two, these hypocrites." I turned fully toward Gregory and Margaret now, smile sharp enough to cut steel. "You want to play this game? Fine, you've made your choice." I lifted my chin. "I'll see you in court." A beat of stunned silence. "I may be 70 years old," I continued, "but I've lived long enough to finally see things clearly. And if nothing else, I can say this. Before my life ends, I will take back everything that's rightfully mine. I didn't wait for a response, didn't spare a glance at Sophia, who stood there slack-jawed, torn between disbelief and humiliation. I turned on my heel and walked out of the banquet hall, out of the grand, glittering farce they called a wedding. By the time I returned home that night, something inside me had shifted. Gone was the version of me who begged. Gone was the woman who once tried to hold a crumbling marriage together with trembling hands and stitched-up hope. No, that version of me died today. And as I stood in my bedroom, staring at the few things I owned, the battered suitcase, half full, I realized something else. I had almost nothing that was truly mine. Everything, every single thing I'd ever poured my love and effort into was either controlled, diminished, or dismissed by someone else. Gregory, Sophia, Margaret, all of them. No more. I zipped the suitcase shut, dragged it to the front door, and right as I did, the door opened. Gregory, Margaret, Sophia. Back already. Sophia was the first to speak, her voice casual like nothing had happened. "Mom, you can stay here for a little while. We're going on a trip anyway." A trip? Of course. A book signing. Margaret's new release. They wanted to celebrate their triumph, to parade their love across city lines. "Well," I smiled faintly, "I hope you all have a wonderful trip." I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was done. And somehow, that unsettled them more than any screaming match ever could. Gregory cleared his throat, his tone overly careful. "Eleanor, you're a reasonable person. Just don't do anything foolish, all right?" Even Sophia shifted, visibly uncomfortable. "Where are you?" she asked, softer now. "I'll drive you." I turned to her then, something hollow in my chest. This was the daughter who for years had been too embarrassed to even be seen at the grocery store with me. The same woman who told her friends I was just a relative from the countryside visiting for the summer.
And now? She was offering to drive me? Guilt? Embarrassment? Or was it just fear of how things would look to others? I smiled. That won't be necessary. My eyes flicked between them. You should stay here. Spend some quality time with your new mother. After all, you'll need her influence if you want to keep climbing that social ladder. Sophia's lips parted, as if to say something, but I didn't wait. I turned away, didn't glance back, didn't say goodbye. I walked out of that house like it was nothing more than a cage I'd finally unlocked. That night, after I walked out of that house, no, that prison, I sat alone in a small, dimly lit motel room with nothing but my battered suitcase by the door and the hollow echo of silence pressing against my chest. But the silence didn't hurt, not anymore. I opened my phone, just out of habit, and as if the universe wasn't done mocking me yet, the first thing that popped up was Sophia's latest post. A family portrait. There they stood, Sophia, Gregory, and Margaret, smiling with the kind of closeness that stabbed deeper than any knife. Sophia was leaning in toward Margaret, their faces pressed close together, as if they were mother and daughter by blood. You'd never guess they hadn't known each other for most of Sophia's life. If Margaret had ever borne a daughter of her own, she wouldn't have looked any different from the way Sophia nestled against her now. But then, Margaret couldn't have children. I remembered that clearly. A serious illness in her younger years had left her infertile. Henry, dear, loyal Henry, had known, and yet he loved her all the more for it. Never wavered, never strayed. The more I thought about Henry, the deeper the ache grew. If Margaret hadn't given Gregory any hope all those years ago, he never would have proposed to her the very moment Henry's coffin had been lowered into the ground. It was disgusting, transparent, obvious. Those two had been entangled long before Henry ever passed. I sat in that chair, staring at that photo, until my hands clenched into fists. And then, with a sudden surge of clarity, I opened a new contact in my phone. A lawyer. I explained everything. Decades of sacrifice, of labor, of being silenced, dismissed, and degraded. How I had given up my education so Gregory could pursue his. How I raised Sophia without a penny of my own to my name. How they now wanted to discard me like an unwanted relic. On the other end of the line, the lawyer went dead silent for several seconds. Then his voice returned, cold, sharp, righteous. "Ma'am, this is outrageous," he said, "completely unacceptable. In your situation, we must expose Gregory as the at-fault party in this divorce. If we don't, he'll twist it in court. He'll claim he supported you financially for years and try to get out of giving you what you rightfully deserve." I swallowed hard. I'm not good at this kind of thing. Public speaking? Confrontation? "Then don't speak," the lawyer said without missing a beat. "Just record. Tell your story, upload it. The public will listen." His confidence was contagious. A warmth bloomed in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. So, I did it. I sat in that little motel room, propped my phone up against an empty coffee cup, and hit record. I told them everything. I told them about the girl who gave up her dream of education so the boy she loved could have his. About the wife who spent 5 decades behind the scenes, cooking, cleaning, raising children, holding together a family that never once acknowledged her worth. About the woman who now stood discarded because, apparently, love had an expiration date written in degrees and diplomas. At the end, I said the line my lawyer had urged me to say. I don't want him back. I just want what I'm owed. For a few trembling seconds after hitting post, I stared at my screen, waiting for the backlash, for the tidal wave of insults, for the world to call me petty, bitter, embarrassing. But it didn't. Instead, the comments started pouring in. Wait, isn't this the woman from that viral professor's wedding? The one with the silver-haired love story? No way. She's the first wife? Grandma, you did the right thing. Fight for your rights. You sacrificed everything for him. How dare he toss you aside? This isn't even about money. This is about basic respect. She gave up her life for him. And now? This? Absolutely not. I stared, stunned, as the tide turned. People, strangers, thousands of them, rallied behind me. Young women, mothers, grandparents, even a few brave men who understood the cost of being invisible. Gregory called the next morning. "Eleanor," his voice was tight, bordering on frantic. "What are you trying to do? You want money? Fine, I'll give it to you. Just delete that video. Do you even realize what you've done? People are attacking Margaret. She's cried so much her eyes are swollen." From the background, a small sob filtered through. Ethan's voice. "Grandma's bad. Grandma only wants money. Grandma's evil." It should have shattered me. Before, it would have. But now? Now it only made me smile, cold and steady. "I've already had my lawyer draft a new divorce agreement," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "Sign it, Gregory. Once the divorce is finalized, this will all be over." There was a long silence. Then, through gritted teeth, he said, "Fine." Click. He hung up. I leaned back, phone still in hand, and breathed out a long, steady breath. It was almost over. Or so I thought. I should have known better. That afternoon, a new post appeared on social media from Sophia. "My mother has been a housewife her whole life, but she has a domineering personality. My father and I lived under immense pressure because of her. She keeps hinting in her video that my father cheated, but let me ask, how could he have possibly cheated? He's 70 years old. After a life trapped in a hopeless marriage, is it so wrong that he finally gathered the courage to ask for a divorce?" And just then, Aunt Margaret became a widow. 2 lovers, finally reunited in their twilight years. What's so wrong about that? The comments turned again. Ugh, this again? Some women really are so bitter. Her daughter said it herself. Must have been a nightmare to live with. Yeah, 70 years old. Let the man be happy. Like a tidal wave, the blame rolled back onto me. I stared at the screen, fists trembling. A message popped up from Sophia. I told you, Mom. Just stop. Stop fighting. Go back to Willow Creek. Live out the rest of your days quietly. That's the best outcome for you. She signed it off with a thumbs up emoji. Gregory, sensing the public tide shifting, saw his chance. Suddenly, he was nowhere to be found. Calls unanswered, paperwork ignored, messages left unread. My lawyer fumed. Ma'am, your daughter, I cannot believe this. She's sabotaging you at every step. Doesn't she realize what you've been through? I let the silence drag for a moment before answering softly. No, she doesn't. The fury boiling inside me was no longer just about Gregory. No, this was about all of them. All the years I was told to stay small, stay quiet, be grateful for the crumbs I was given. I was done. Completely done. While Gregory buried his head in the sand, pretending I didn't exist, Margaret was busy basking in her fleeting victory. At her latest book signing, an event that should have been about her so-called literary achievements, she decided to offer the audience something else, a veiled jab, a public performance polished and wrapped in poetic cruelty. Standing before her admirers, she smiled gracefully and said, "A woman, no matter her age, is always a rose, meant to be cherished. And if she isn't loved, perhaps she was never a rose worth loving to begin with." Applause erupted. They didn't hear the venom beneath her gentle phrasing, but I did. Oh, I did.
I leaned back in my chair, watching the video on my phone, lips curling into something cold, humorless. So, that's how you want to play it. Margaret really thought she had won. Just when the world was convinced that I was the villain, that Gregory was the poor old man trying to reclaim lost love, and that Margaret was the gracious, long-suffering heroine, someone reached out. An unexpected ally. Patrick, Henry's nephew, the only person who had ever truly seen through Margaret's perfect little facade. His message was short. I have something you should see. Later that evening, he sent me a video. I pressed play. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Wilson. Margaret calls me her nephew, but in truth, I was Uncle Henry's nephew, his only family. Since I was a kid, I loved photography. Uncle Henry supported that, bought me my first camera, and through that lens, I captured things I wish I hadn't seen. His eyes flickered down, struggling for a moment. For years, I debated whether to tell him, whether to break his heart. But before I could, he passed away. A pause. Then Daniel raised his head, gaze steady. Margaret was never faithful to him. Never. And yes, one of those men was Gregory. The screen flickered, photos appeared. Decades-old photos, but clear as day. Gregory and Margaret, sitting together in cafes far away from the city. Gregory leaning in, a hand over hers. Margaret smiling in a way no woman smiles at someone she calls just a friend. Photo after photo, year after year, a secret stitched into the background of their lives. Daniel's voice returned, firm, resolute. Even I didn't realize how far it went, how long it lasted. But now, I won't stay silent anymore. My uncle loved Margaret, to the end, and this is how she repaid him. The video ended. My hand trembled, not from fear, from the sheer, overwhelming surge of something sharp. Not revenge, not hate. Clarity. I called Daniel immediately. The moment his voice came through, I couldn't stop myself. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. Ma'am, you and my uncle, you're the same. You're both good people. You gave your lives to people who didn't deserve it. I won't watch it happen again." The call ended, but the storm had only begun. The moment Daniel's video went public, the internet exploded. The narrative flipped like a coin tossed into the air. Wait, what? So they were cheating this whole time? Decades of an affair? Are you kidding me? And Margaret sat there at her book signing, talking about roses and being cherished, while stabbing her late husband in the back? I feel sick. I used to be a fan of hers. Sophia's message popped up instantly. "You froze all the family assets. How are we supposed to live now?" I didn't even flinch, didn't bother replying. 2 minutes later, Gregory called. His voice was shaking, half anger, half desperation. "Eleanor, how could you? You're really suing me? Are you trying to ruin my reputation?" For the first time, I laughed. Not bitter, not broken, genuinely amused. "Gregory," I said calmly, "ruin your reputation? Oh, darling, I didn't ruin it. You did." Silence. Then he exploded. "You've gone too far." I hung up. No words left to waste. My lawyer was practically buzzing with satisfaction when he called next. "Ma'am, congratulations. We filed the lawsuit, divorce, asset division, and damages for emotional distress. Also, slander." He chuckled. "By the way, your story's everywhere. News outlets, blogs, even legal commentary channels. People are furious on your behalf." It didn't stop there. Former neighbors came forward, old colleagues of Gregory's. Even a young woman who had once idolized Margaret sent a public statement. I used to think Margaret was the epitome of elegance, but after seeing the truth, I'm ashamed I ever looked up to her. Turns out, some people are only graceful when no one knows the skeletons in their closet. The consequences came swiftly.
Margaret's books were pulled from every shelf. Publishing houses issued cold, detached statements. While we believe in the power of literature, we also believe in the importance of integrity. Effective immediately, we are terminating all contracts with Margaret. Northvale University, the institution where Gregory had worked for most of his life, released a statement. "We are reviewing the honorary status of former Professor Gregory Turner in light of recent revelations." By the end of the week, his portrait had been quietly removed from the faculty wall, his name deleted from the official website, his legacy erased. Sophia's ambitions shattered right alongside it. All her carefully curated connections, her hopes of leveraging Margaret's influence, of parading herself as the intellectual daughter of a prestigious family, gone, overnight. I heard through the grapevine that the social circle she'd fought tooth and nail to enter had turned their backs on her. Doors slammed shut, job opportunities vanished. It turns out, when your ladder collapses, there's nothing left to climb. Then, one evening, someone knocked on my door. I opened it, and there they were, Gregory and Margaret. But not the proud, untouchable pair they'd been before. No. Margaret's legs buckled the moment her eyes met mine. She dropped to her knees, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Eleanor, please, please, let this go. I can't take this anymore." Behind her, Gregory stood stiff, his face dark red, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a voice so low I almost didn't catch it, he muttered, If you leave Margaret alone, I'll come back. We can go back to how things were." I blinked, then laughed, once, sharp, loud, disbelieving. "You really, really think I'm doing this because I want you back?" His eyes flickered. You actually believe that?" I shook my head. "Oh, Gregory, you always did think too highly of yourself." I stepped forward, close enough for him to smell the peppermint oil on my skin, the one I always wore to soothe my nerves. "The day you asked for a divorce was the day I stopped considering you my husband," I said quietly. "I'm not fighting for you. I'm fighting for me, for the life you took, for the girl my father sacrificed so much to protect."
Gregory's mouth opened, then closed again. No words came. Margaret was still sobbing, gasping for breath, trembling like a leaf in the wind. I looked down at her, then nudged her gently with the tip of my shoe. Not to hurt her, just enough to knock her slightly off balance. She flinched, scrambling away, staring up at me as if I'd just kicked her. But even then, after everything, I never once laid a hand on her, never sunk to their level. I'd endured, and now I was done enduring. I crouched down, leveled my gaze with hers, and smiled. "Enough with the act," I said softly. "We both know you don't mean a single word of this apology." Her breath hitched. She knew it too. She knew. Gregory's face turned a dark shade of crimson, his mouth pressed into a tight line, fists clenched, as though he still had something left to hold on to, his pride, perhaps. But even that was fraying at the edges, collapsing like the house of cards he'd spent his entire life building. Margaret remained on the floor, trembling, her mascara-streaked face looking utterly defeated. But I could see it, the flicker in her eyes. It wasn't sorrow, not truly. It was fear, fear of losing everything. Because that was exactly what was happening. Without Gregory, she was nothing. Without him, there was no money, no status, no comfortable old age supported by someone else's sacrifices. And Gregory? He was just beginning to realize that his desperate offer to come crawling back wasn't just pathetic, it was useless. He cleared his throat, tried one last time. "Eleanor, I regret it, all of it. Let's put this behind us. Let's just move on." I raised an eyebrow, arms folding across my chest. "Move on?" My voice was sharp but frighteningly calm. "Gregory, you don't get to decide that anymore." And just then, my phone buzzed. Sophia. Her name lit up the screen like a ghost refusing to let go. I swiped it open without a word, letting it connect on speaker. "Mom!" Her voice was frantic. "Dad and Margaret said they were going to your place to apologize. Are you talking right now?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched as Gregory stiffened, his head whipping toward me. Margaret's hands clawed at the hem of my skirt like a lifeline. "Mom?" Sophia pressed, her voice lowering. Is Margaret crying? Dad said she's crying." I stared at Gregory. His lips twitched. He was too ashamed to answer himself. Coward. With deliberate precision, I replied, "Yes, your mother is crying." A pause. "What?" Sophia blurted. "My mom isn't— You mean Margaret's crying?" The corner of my lips curled. "Oh, no, darling, I'm not crying." Silence. Complete, hollow silence on the other end. And in that moment, something inside me clicked into place. Final, irreversible. I slid my thumb across the screen and hit block. Just like that, the number vanished. The thread of this mother-daughter relationship cut forever. For years, I had wondered if I was simply too sensitive, too weak, too desperate for love. Wondered if maybe I was the problem, the reason why my own daughter couldn't respect me, why my husband saw me as a burden. But no, the truth was simpler and crueler. They had never loved me for me. They loved what I did for them, the meals, the clean laundry, the patched clothes, the quiet acceptance of being treated like nothing. And the moment I stopped, the moment I asked for even the smallest sliver of respect, they recoiled like I was some parasite they couldn't wait to be rid of. Well, I was rid of them now. Half an hour after Gregory and Margaret slunk away from my doorstep, my lawyer called. "Good news," he said, cheerful, almost celebratory. "Gregory caved. He signed the divorce agreement." I didn't even blink. Of course he did. "He knows damn well he wouldn't survive court," the lawyer added. "Not with the public watching, not with the media chewing on every crumb of this story." He was right. Gregory had spent his life worshiping one thing above all else, his reputation. He'd rather give up the house than let the world see him dragged through court by the very woman he'd once dismissed as insignificant. The final settlement was clean.
The house remained his. It was, frankly, filled with memories I had no interest in preserving. But aside from our joint cash accounts, Gregory was ordered to compensate me with an additional $300,000. It wasn't some grand fortune, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to build something of my own. I bought a piece of land in Willow Creek, a small plot nestled against the hills, not far from the river I used to play by as a child. I planted vegetables. I raised chickens, ducks, and a handful of goats. I built a farmhouse, simple but sturdy, and next to it, a cafe. My cafe. Willow Hearth Cafe. Word spread faster than I expected. People loved the fresh eggs, the pesticide-free vegetables, the homemade cakes. Travelers passing through loved the quiet. City folks, tired of noise and pretense, came searching for peace. And I gave it to them. For the first time in my life, every smile I saw, every compliment I received, it was mine. Not because I was someone's wife, not because I was someone's mother, because I was me. On Thanksgiving, as the golden sunlight streamed over the hills, I was counting receipts at the cafe when a soft voice spoke behind me. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you the brave grandma from the internet?" I turned. A young woman stood there, maybe in her 20s. Her hands were folded nervously in front of her. But her eyes were filled with something that struck me right in the chest.
Admiration. "Are you the one? The one who fought back?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "The one who started over after 70? For a second, the words caught in my throat, but then I smiled. "Yes," I said softly, "that's me." Her face lit up. I just wanted to say, you inspired me. You proved it's never too late to start again. I really needed to hear that." I reached over and patted her hand. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means more than you know." She smiled, nodded, then slipped out the door, leaving behind the faintest trace of lavender perfume. For a while, I sat there, alone, quiet, content. And that's how I heard about what became of Gregory and Margaret. The scandal never died down. It stuck, a stain that no amount of charity work, no number of apologies, no carefully staged photo shoots could scrub clean. Gregory's contract with Northvale University was terminated without ceremony. His portrait removed, his name erased. Margaret's books? Gone. Publishers severed ties. Libraries quietly retired her titles from their shelves. Sophia, once so eager to use Margaret's name as her ladder, found herself ostracized. Her social circle collapsed. Her carefully crafted reputation evaporated. And it wasn't just the public shame. Her job prospects dried up. Her relationships strained. The friends she once flaunted disappeared the moment her value as a connection vanished. All that ambition? Wasted. Because it had never been hers. It had always belonged to someone else. I sometimes wondered if they regretted it. If, in the quiet of the night, Gregory ever thought about the girl from Willow Creek, the one who gave up everything for him, the one he abandoned. If Margaret ever felt the weight of what she did to Henry, to me. If Sophia ever realized she hadn't just lost a mother, she'd lost the only person in her life who had ever truly loved her without condition. But those weren't my burdens to carry anymore. Not now. Not ever again. As the months passed, the dust settled, not over their lives, but over mine. For the first time, peace wasn't something I begged for. It was something I owned, something I had built with my own 2 hands. Life in Willow Hearth Cafe became something of a gentle routine. Mornings were filled with the smell of baking bread and the chatter of early customers sipping coffee beneath the wide sycamore tree out front. Afternoons were spent tending to the vegetable garden or watching the ducks waddle lazily across the yard. There were no insults here, no belittling, no cold shoulders masked behind the word family. Here, I was simply Eleanor, a woman who had learned to take up space in the world. Sometimes, when the cafe was quiet, other women came, some young, some old, each with a familiar kind of heaviness in their eyes. They didn't have to explain. I saw myself in all of them. The girl who gave everything and was told it wasn't enough. The mother who was expected to sacrifice without complaint. The wife who was never seen as anything more than someone else's shadow. They sat at my counter, hands wrapped around mugs of tea, and slowly their stories spilled out. And every time I smiled and told them the same thing, you don't have to stay small. You don't have to wait for permission. It's not too late. Because I was living proof. One afternoon, as I was harvesting cucumbers in the garden, a familiar voice startled me from behind. "Grandma?" I turned, and there he was. Ethan. A little taller than before. His backpack slightly askew on his small shoulders, his shoes scuffed from running, as always. He shifted from foot to foot, unsure, nibbling his bottom lip. "Grandma, can I stay for a while?" My breath caught. For a second, my hands trembled around the basket I was holding. I crouched down so we were face to face. "Does your mom know you're here?" His lips pressed into a thin line. "She doesn't care. She's busy. She and Grandpa are fighting, again. And," his voice quivered, "and I don't like being there." My heart twisted, but I didn't let the sadness show on my face. Not anymore. I brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "Of course you can stay." His eyes brightened instantly. "Really?" I ruffled his hair. "Really." Ethan stayed the entire weekend. He helped me collect eggs, fed the ducks, even learned how to knead bread dough with his tiny, flour-covered hands. In the evenings, we sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in streaks of gold and lavender. He didn't ask about Gregory, or Sophia, not once. And neither did I. When Sunday evening came, he hugged me tight, burying his face in my shoulder. "Grandma, can I come again next weekend?" My throat tightened. I nodded. "Anytime you want, sweetheart. Anytime." It wasn't long before I heard the whispers about Sophia. Her life had unraveled more quickly than anyone expected. Without Gregory's reputation or Margaret's connections, she was nobody. Job offers dried up. Networking events stopped sending invitations. Even her so-called friends, those sleek, sophisticated people she had once admired so desperately, began to avoid her. The higher you climb on a ladder built from other people, the harder you fall when it collapses. I wasn't cruel enough to gloat, but neither did I feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She had made her choices, and now, so had I. Spring arrived, draping Willow Creek in blossoms. Customers from the city drove out just to sit beneath the trees, sip tea, and breathe air that wasn't soaked in concrete and exhaust fumes. One afternoon, as I was arranging fresh pies in the display case, an elderly man approached the counter, smiling gently. "You must be Eleanor," he said. "I've heard about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, should I be flattered or worried?" He chuckled. "Flattered, absolutely. I run the Community Development Board for Willow Creek. We've been following your little cafe's success. It's bringing life back to this town." He pulled a brochure from his bag and unfolded it on the counter. "We're putting together a farmer's market, local produce, homemade goods, workshops, and we were hoping you'd consider being one of our featured vendors. Maybe even give a talk. Your story has inspired more people than you realize." I blinked. "A talk?" He smiled warmly. "A lot of women.
A lot of people, frankly, need to hear that it's never too late to start over. You've shown them that. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Me? A speaker? But then, I looked around the cafe, at the photographs lining the walls, the shelves of homemade jam, the customers laughing under the sun-dappled trees. And I smiled. "All right," I said, reaching out to shake his hand. "Count me in. All right." On the day of the farmer's market, as I stood beneath a white canvas tent, I looked out at the small crowd gathered in front of me. Women, men, young, old, some holding notebooks, some holding nothing but hope. And for the first time in my life, I spoke. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's mother, but as Eleanor, a woman who had built a life from the ashes of the one others tried to burn. I told them my story, told them about the girl who gave everything, the woman who was told she wasn't enough, the wife who was discarded, and the grandmother who decided no more. I watched their faces shift, first in sadness, then in determination. I saw the spark catch in their eyes, the quiet flame of realization. It's not too late. It's never too late. As the sun set that evening, I walked back to Willow Hearth Cafe with a smile stretched wide across my face. The past was behind me, and ahead, a life fully, wholly, entirely mine. And for the first time, that was more than enough. In life, there are moments when being silent feels safer, when we sacrifice, endure, and stay small just to keep the peace. But this story reminds us of something powerful. It's never too late to stand up for yourself. After dedicating decades of her life to her husband, family, and home, Eleanor was discarded like she never mattered. But instead of crumbling, she rose. She fought, not for revenge, but for dignity, justice, and the life she deserved. Her journey is proof that age is never a limit, and neither is anyone's opinion of you. You are never too old, too uneducated, or too ordinary to start over, rebuild, and thrive on your own terms. If this story inspired you or touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future empowering stories like this one. Your support means the world. It helps this channel grow and share more stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. And before you go, drop a comment below. Tell me, which country or region are you watching from? I'd love to know where in the world this story